Hello and welcome to the Book by Book, a podcast about the odd book or two we've read. I'm your host Scott and I'm not alone, Toby's here too. This episode, we're talking about End of Watch by Stephen King. It's going to be a pretty spoiler heavy episode, but if that's okay with you, continue on and I'll see you on the other side. End of Watch. I've come to realise Finders Keeper is a terrible title for his agency, for Hodges' agency. They don't find lost objects and they don't keep them. They're not Indiana Jones. They basically find like bail jumpers and stuff. It's a great name for the book. The second one, because of the kid and the books, it doesn't make any sense that it's what he called his agency. It just ties
That's
in.
a very good point. Yes, it's finders. They are finders.
Finders peoples.
Yeah, finders peoples. People finders.
Toby, before we even start, I want to read what is the last page of this book. When you look at our...
This is a last page of End of Watch.
When you look at the stats of our YouTube listeners, no one makes it to the end. So this prominent message, I'm going to read at the head of the podcast. This is the last page of End of Watch listeners. Hey, how you doing? Bear with me. We'll get our act together. One last thing. End of Watch is fiction. But the high rate of suicides, both in the United States and in many other countries where my books are read, is all too real. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline number is given in this book. It's also real. It's 1-800-273-TALK. If you're feeling poopy, as Holly Gibney would say, give them a call because things can get better if you just give them a chance. They usually do.
Good. It's a very wise word.
We're sort of dealing with suicide in this book. I don't think we're going to get too much into it. I've got thoughts on that because I'm going to go into it. But, spread the news.
Yes,
we have a little platform.
There are people out there that will help and can listen. And
I think we've had a previous book, and what did you say? Like help is a phone call away or something. If you're at home and you're feeling down, seek help.
Yep.
I finally read End of Watch, Toby, the finale of the Bill Hodges trilogy.
Before you speak, I have a feeling you're probably not going to be on such a fan of this. I think this is my predictions of Scott's. I think your second one is going to be the most favourite of the trilogy, controversially, but that's part of the course with Scott when it comes to book reading and things like that. And I think this will probably be your least favourite, and that the second one will be first one will be it was good beach read, great one, the second one, and then oh dear.
Why don't you think I like this one?
Because of the supernatural elements, the far-fetchedness of it, the leaps of faith that you have to take, the fact that up until this point it's been very much based in the realms of reality. This goes well and truly outside of that and takes it to areas that have not really been alluded to apart from the very end of End of Watch. There we go. So Scott, go. What did you think?
I felt I didn't really like this one so much. I thought that there's a supernatural element that comes from nowhere. I feel like it just makes you have these leaps in faith on what this book is going on. No, you are hitting the nail on the head, Toby.
I know I am. I always do.
I wanted to save that to the end because I want to tell the story with some pep. So I wanted to hide that rather than I'm going to try and not nitpick.
Yeah.
But I can't help feel, but midway of reading this, I just thought, what a load of toss.
This just come in.
Yeah. I've sort of listened to a whole bunch of sort of those sort of 3-minute reviews on YouTube and sort of went on Goodreads to get a census. I feel like I'm in a good half. Like it's a very split thing, as you can say, a love it or hate it thing. And for exactly the reasons you predicted, it's where did this come from? Like this, we haven't nodded towards this.
Nope.
But I have some thoughts about how this could have worked for me.
Okay. Did you like the return of Brady?
I did. I've sort of grown to like him. Something prominent. I don't know, prominent. I finished season 1 of Mr. Mercedes, the TV show.
Yes.
Really good. They actually didn't hit that hard chase rush climax.
Right.
Obviously,
I've not finished it.
Budgetary reasons, it's sort of actually toned down more because of the budget, I think, and the scale of that one. But so even though the climax, as it were, isn't quite the rush, the show itself is pretty good. I'm super hyped to see season 2. Someone sort of dropped a review that said that they've changed the crap out of End of Watch. So Jesus, let me get my words. Season 1 of the TV show is the complete first book.
Yep.
Beginning to end, and it ends with the Brady still gets bashed on the head. And then season 2 is End of Watch.
Yes.
And season 3 is Finders Keepers.
Yes.
So they've shifted a lot of things. Just from that, I'm wondering if the supernatural was clipped right out. I don't know.
I don't know either.
We'll have to do what we watched, the complete Mr. Mercedes. But I'm glad that they have done. I'm interested to see what they do with it.
Yeah.
And also how Finders Keepers can become its own TV show. So kudos on the writers for stretching it. Because I thought they should have just put it in as the first 2 episodes of the second season. Like, if we look at it from Hodges' point of view, it's only like 2 days work for him.
Yeah.
But so, yes, I was kind of excited to see, dropped my copy.
Where the TV series goes.
But Brady come back. I didn't dislike him in the first one, but I wasn't a crazy.
No.
There are people online saying this is Stephen King's best villain. When you rank his villains, I guess, I don't know really. I guess for me, I'm thinking of, always my issue now is I still gravitate towards those classics.
Yeah.
And as a result, I sort of process quite slowly his modern stuff. Like I put it in a whole different basket. So I'm thinking of like Annie Wilkes and Randall Flagg from The Stand.
Yeah. The Overlook Hotel.
And if I do compare Brady to those, it's like, actually, it makes me dislike him more. But you know what they say, comparison is the killer of joy. But saying that, we have a podcast where we literally compare. Well, I literally compare everything to my favorite books he wrote 20 decades ago. Yeah, not 20 decades ago, 2 decades ago, maybe more. There's this funny scene in End of the Tour, and it's just a sort of movie about a writer, and he's sort of touring his new book, and a guy sort of plunks down like his first book, and he's like, hey, do you mind signing this old stuff? And he has this, sure, but the new stuff is a lot better. And I guess I think we talked about in the past, that thing King must get frustrated when it's like, oh dude, I love your work, Carrie's great, and it's like, I feel like I've gotten better as a writer.
I think a lot of that stems from not so much the writing, but the time that the first initial contact with something. You remember that more and revere it more because it is your first. Right. Rather than it being everything else is bad since, it's just that is the best of it because it was your first version of it. Your first encounter, like having a kiss, or your first encounter of reading a Stephen King novel or a Shem Mary, your favorite author's novel. The first time you read it is always going to be like, for me, The Dark Half is still one of my favorite ever Stephen King books. It's the first one I ever read.
Because it's your introduction. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It's just the nostalgia, I suppose.
Yeah, totally.
But I also do think, at least with King, there's a rawness to his young writing.
Yes.
One of my notes in this is that I feel like End of Watch actually kind of pulls its punches. And although there are some dark moments, I was expecting and hoping for an absolute complete catastrophe of Brady doing some serious damage to the world. And I was thinking there was going to be one chapter where it's like he's winning and it is absolute chaos. And we just get kind of a small snippet. And we'll get into what that is. Before we go on, let's give a quick overview of End of Watch.
Yep, go for it.
Brady's got telekinesis powers and he can fight back with it. No, in the last book, if you remember, the nurses are getting spooked out by him. Like when they leave a room, the tap is running. And so we find out in this book that his doctor, I should have his name because he's in and out of it, is giving him an experimental drug. And it's given him what turns out to be a bunch of powers, but we'll put under the umbrella of Professor X from, what does he call it? Is it telekinesis?
Yeah, in essence.
But he can also use the Force. He can physically move shit around. And he finds he can jump into people's bodies. I don't know why.
Astral projection.
Yes.
Basically.
which is kind of two very different things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We'll get into why he had both of those
again,
powers.
it's not so much that he is suddenly a Jedi by any shape or form. He is very much a fledgling Jedi.
No, yeah, it because the books, I guess it almost backtracks to the events of Finders Keepers and precedes them from Brady's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And
so Brady's growth and development of powers and his skills and his abilities happens parallel to what is happening in Finders Keepers. Basically, that's going off on somewhere else, and Brady, meanwhile, was in a hospital going.
And also, I don't think he's a janitor, but like an orderly gets this sort of dump of like, you are sort of looking after sort of different. It's not because he's not in prison; he's in a hospice, a care ward.
Yes, he is indeed.
And this orderly guy gets like a crate of a disused gaming system called Zappits, and it's just like a failed Game Boy, the Game Gear. I guess he gets a modern Game Gear, and he's like, I don't know, I'll give it to some patients. And I don't even think it's a game. I think there's just like a sort of screensaver of fish. And he just thinks there's a few patients who might enjoy it. Because I think at this point, Brady he was completely zonked out in the last book. But this time you sort of hear that he can say ish, yes or no when he doesn't like something. He can just about move a finger or there's no coherence. So he thinks maybe I'll put this Zappit in his hands and he can just play the simplest games and even just watch these fish.
It's like you just tap the screen when a fish goes across or something.
Yeah,
like that, isn't it?
I sort of got mixed up whether this was it's not a game, and over the events of the book, Brady adapts it into a game, or it was just a screensaver. I guess it's just detail; it doesn't make too much of a difference. But
from my memory, very much, I think it is just when you see a red, you tap it. When you see a ding, you tap it.
Right.
Points with a tap in it. It's just dish. It's like Flappy Bird and all those modern games that you see nowadays. In essence, it may well be a screensaver, but with the game laid over the top, or that might be the actual total game. Yeah.
And we find out a reason this particular gaming console wasn't that successful is because it had these very almost hypnotic tendencies. Kids would sort of accidentally like just walk into fall down a staircase because they were sort of
too busy
exactly that hypnotized in. If you think there's going to be some sort of commentary about modern addiction to phones, no, there's not. It sort of stops there.
No.
And so Brady, there's two people he can sort of astro project into. This orderly guy, and he finds that this guy is quite old and not everyone is susceptible to him jumping in them. And he can literally astro project in them and control their bodies a bit.
Isn't the orderly slightly simple at the time?
I think he's slow at the early stages of Alzheimer's, maybe.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But I don't know.
What weakens the barriers, is it?
I don't know if he likens that to him. There's a very brutal scene where he says, "On the way out, I just yanked all the cables. Like I just, like on the last trip out, I just damaged his brain by." I think he just says that. I just, on the way out, pull all the cables and leave this guy with nothing, which is the synapses, that's kind of when this book is at its best, when Brady is just being horrible and he does some serious damage. And on the Hodges front, Hodges is getting sick and they're pulled into this case by his old partner whose name I don't remember.
He was in the first one, wasn't he? Yeah,
he was the guy who sort of told him to get off the case. He says, like, there's just been a very odd death, which is probably just a coincidence death, but there's a very slight link to people who are survivors of the Mercedes incident dying. And they don't think it's anything, but they want him to look into it because they know he's close. And now it's like, he's a official private investigator with Holly Gibney. And they're sort of they're officially brought into the case this time.
Jerome's is he part of Finders Keepers at this point? I can't remember.
No, he's not. They talk about him, but he is off doing goodwill stuff. He's like building homes for the poor, working on his sort of pre-university, or he's taken a year out of university to do some sort of, I don't know, care work. And I guess as the plot thickens, there's like Holly and Hodges are just brought back to Brady, and they can't really figure out why. I don't know why he does it, but Brady basically gets back on the blue umbrella and taunts Hodges. Kind of his undoing.
Of course it is.
I don't know why the fuck he did that. That was a bit
Well,
dumb. You do it afterwards.
Yeah, I guess it's a case of
can't help it.
Yeah,
he needs an audience.
That's exactly it. That was what Brady was always about, wasn't it? Taunting Hodges.
And just for a bit more detail, it's like, I don't know if we talk about the great plan. I guess we will. Like, he adapts these Zappit systems, and he sort of finds a way to send them out to a lot of the survivors who a lot of them were kids because it was like a young pop concert, who are now like sort of mid-aged teenagers.
Does he does this through the orderly? Am I correct?
And the doctor. I think the doctor. I think he has to let go of the orderly early on because he finds he's like, that's him testing his powers.
Yeah.
And I think he burns him out. I think he does use him to spy on people.
So he taps into the doctor's psyche and uses the doctor to.
And I guess oddly, the doctor kind of knows. There's a very strange thing I didn't quite get, where the doctor is sort of talking to Brady, and he knows, but he's sort of, is Gungadin the right term? Like, he knows he's been giving him dodgy medical experiments. Is that right?
He's almost
right.
a lab rat. Yeah, basically. Brady's using Brady as a lab rat to test out new drugs and
so
drugs.
They fix these Zappits and they send them out. They just adapt them. He actually brings back Freddie, who I remember from the TV show. I have no recollection of her from the book, because in season 1, in book 1, Brady works in like a sort of Best Buy as a computer fixer guy, and it was his co-worker, a sort of like rock and roll, hard lesbian, drinking, your classic cyber.
Yeah,
the classic cyber chick.
Somebody I think would be really good to play her would be Ethan Hawke's Maya Hawke.
Oh, okay.
I think she'd make a great Freddie.
Interesting. Because I'm dueling. I don't remember her from the first book. She's in the TV show a lot more, and you're sort of sympathetic to her. She's sort of like, they're in the town they're in is sort of like financially in ruins. So that although she is quite not complacent, but like attitude to the customers, they are shitty to her. But she does need the job. And I guess her character's more fleshed out in the TV show than in the books. So it's weird for me that she's brought back in, and I'm picturing her from the TV show. But I think they're on par with her, I suppose, that she still has that same attitude. They haven't rewritten her in any way, but she is a bit more complicit in this one. She's not necessarily neutral.
No.
And we'll get into that. Jesus, where are we? He sends the Zappits out to like kids, teenagers who are mostly the survivors of not the Mercedes incident, but the attempted bombing of the gig. And he can sort of, when they're playing the fishing game, telepathically talk to them. It's like, hello, I'm the voice. How are you doing? Like, they don't like you very much, do you? Ooh, you're not getting on with your mum. Your mum doesn't like you very much. You should just run away. And like, just subliminally get in their heads. And he takes a shot at Jerome's sister at a chapter called Blackish, where he sort of makes her resent her upbringing. And she goes to like a rough, predominantly black part of town, and just says like, you're not black, like you have this super sort of suburban upbringing, look at this. And he just gets into her head and kind of pushes her, convinces her to walk in front of a bus. And she does, and she gets hit by a bus. And we do that great thing where the chapter ends like, whoa, holy crap. And at that point I was like, okay, we're back at that Cujo King where he is not afraid to go there. So
like, knowing what we know about your feelings on this book, where are you at this point? Because you've just made that sound really exciting, which I remember reading it and feeling like edge of my seat. Holy shit, he's just chucked this girl under a bus.
I was enjoying Brady. It's that thing. I'm not enjoying the darkness of it. I'm enjoying that we've got a villain who is now targeting people who don't deserve it, and that he has power, and that at this point in the real world, it's like he's going to win.
See, that's interesting because you've got this, as you've alluded to, already this feeling of like, where did this all suddenly come from? This is the problem with the book, but yet it's the reason why you're enjoying the moments you're in now.
Well,
and you're enjoying the Brady character.
You often say it's like, this is what you're given, so get with it and enjoy it, because what's the point? And so at this point I was like, okay. And I guess I can get into it now. Like, it's like he didn't rewrite. It's like his first draft didn't change too much when it kind of should have. Why did he have a physical telekinesis? And all of that pretty much gets dropped in this book. It's like he wrote it in Finders Keepers without the forefront, which is fine. But then he's like, what would be more interesting is if he could do this astral projection thing. And I know it's because of like stuff like X-Men, they come in hand, but why does he have both? Well, he doesn't do anything with the physical ability to move crap around. So it's like he got bored of his own idea, or it's just like, you know what, that's not going to work. I can't now retcon Finders Keepers. So he has to keep this power without doing anything to it. And I guess that I'm really trying not to nitpick. So I don't know if that comes down to a nitpick. I don't think so. It is like, imagine if, by the way, he can fly. Is he going to do anything with it? No, he can fly, and he's not going to do anything with it. Like, well, do something with it or lose it.
Fair enough. So remind me, there is no usage whatsoever of the telekinesis power.
I don't think so.
In the final battle.
Yeah. But that's a sort of spoiler ending. He spoiler alert, we'll jump into it now. He uses it to take his own life when there's a hesitation, which doesn't really amount to much. But
other than that, there's not much usage of it at all. So that's interesting. See, I'd forgotten that he didn't use the telekinesis, and it became all about astral projection. I guess when you're developing powers, here's my counter argument to this. When you're developing powers, and the first one you realize you've got is telekinesis, the second one you realize you've got is the ability to transfer your consciousness into other people's bodies and use them.
And you happen to be wheelchair bound.
Comparison.
You happen to be wheelchair bound.
Yeah.
At the same.
I can understand why I would try a bit. Yeah.
But so we find out his big master plan is to just get these zappets out there and just drive everyone to suicide and spread it. Basically, not now, but there's going to be some talk on The Outsider, just before I forget, somewhere in this podcast, spoilers for Outsider, listener, that one. And it's sort of down to Hodges, Holly, somewhat his old partner, somewhat his new partner, Izzy, and there's this sort of story about the friction she has with Holly. And Jerome comes back into it to sort of figure out how, what, and why, and stop it. Because at one point, Brady's body dies, so it's like it's over. Like Brady's finally dead.
But
they're like, something's not right about this. Something's going on. They don't let it drop, because even if Brady's dead, his plan, it's like even if he's died, his plan is still somewhat forefront. There's the mysterious Z. There's a very convoluted part of the book where it's like, when he's in the orderly's body, he's known as Mr. Z. When he's in the doctor's body, he's known as Dr. Z. The doctor knows he's Brady. So there's a conversation when they're referring to Brady, Dr. Z, Mr. Z, and Dr. Babineau. It's this kind of, to me, it became a bit of a fuck nugget of names when it's like, just call him Brady, you know. I think he tried to capture
as well,
a sort of like he tried to do or did do with Mr. Mercedes when he had the clown mask, and the fact he was Mr. Mercedes killer. When he's on the umbrella, he was like signed Mr. M. It was like, now it's like signed Mr. Z. And there's this thing where he's stalking people and watching them, and they carve Z's into the crime scene, which is something that links them. I have a question for you. You're a huge fan of Holly, and I can see why. She's likable. But something everyone always talks about is her journey in these books. And I'll be honest, I feel like her journey ended at the end of Mr. Mercedes. And now, since then, we've sort of just had Holly on a mission. And it's great to view, but for me, it feels like where she was at the end of Mr. Mercedes is kind of where she is at the beginning and the end of this book. Like her journey's kind of come to an end.
Ooh.
I know she has to deal with stuff. She deals with having a friend in Hodges. I don't know if I said Hodges is sick.
Yes,
I guess
you did
his
mention
story, again, the book doesn't quite go into it, is he needs to seek help and he's putting it off to solve this case. There's a sort of unspoken, like, are you willing to sacrifice your life for your worth? But it doesn't really come down to that. It comes down to, I need to stop him from killing people. So they very much like my issues with the first one, when there's questions of Hodges' not honor, but is he doing the right thing? King always gives us a flat justification of yes, because teenagers are going to die and he has to stop him, which I thought he sort of misses a trick there. You know, is there going to be a stage where Hodges is just like, you're willing to die for this because it gives you use, which kind of takes him back to where he was at the beginning of Mr. Mercedes, because he was suicidal and actually but so now it's almost like are you willing to fight for life separate to the case, kind of, because it's sort of implied he can't do both. You need to seek serious treatment.
It's going to take you out of action, basically, if you go into this treatment.
And he's borderline out of action as we go. He gets more and more pained and becomes sort of unable to move, and he's in physical great pain. Sorry, I put a question to you, didn't I? And then I rambled on.
No, that's right.
How do you feel about Holly in this book?
I can understand your perspective in what you're saying about the fact that her arc or her growth isn't quite as pronounced or as profound as maybe some of us online have alluded to. But for me, what I like about Holly is the fact that she goes from being this very socially awkward, on the spectrum, autistic-like, obsessive, to this crime-fighting, private detective leading, flying all over the country, smacking creatures out of existence,
out of caves.
And if that's not an arc, I don't know what is.
No, you're right. I guess he just goes from strength to strength.
I'm really looking forward to seeing where she goes in Holly.
I'm dying for you to watch The Outsider. I've seen her in season 1 of the TV show Mr. Mercedes. I don't know who my favorite interpretation of her is. You this. And also, it's like I've seen Holly at her youngest and Holly at her most mature. I think what they gave her so much more than The Outsider in the TV show. I think I prefer her story in that. And as a result, I do really like what that actress did. But I do like the Mercedes one. I'm looking forward to watching the rest of the TV show, seeing what they do with her. She does do a good. It's that thing of like I want the Miss Mercedes TV production to carry on and do The Outsider with this actress, and then I want the Outsider production. I want the Outsider production guys to go. I want to see the actress who played her go back and play the young version. It's not going to happen, of course.
No.
Who knows what's in the future for anything. There is talk of an HBO wanting to do an Outsider sequel.
Oh, really?
But HBO didn't pick it up, but the showrunners are, putting it out there for other people. Yeah. Sort of interesting. I don't know who that's going to follow. I guess all of them, I don't know. Like that was let's get into that later. Are we done with End of Watch? I guess, like I said, the team has to get back together.
Yeah.
It becomes that tech side of thing. And I guess it sort of has a climax in like a sort of winter summer house in a snowy field.
So I quite like this setting. I felt this really worked for it as an ending to the whole thing. I like the flurries of snow and the drifts in the forest and the cabin in the woods type feel. And it added a sense of trudgery to it all.
Yeah, I guess I liked it's not necessarily as thrilling as that first book's climax, but it's tense. It ends up with like Hodges, like his wrists broken, and he's sort of not tied to a chair, but he's just physically out physically, so he can only sort of watch. And Brady in Dr. Babineau as Dr. Z now, with like a semi-automatic gun, like an assault rifle. Holly unconscious on the floor, and he's like, "Here's what I'm going to do to you, or I'm going to kill Holly. Take this, zap it, and play the fish game." and he's sort of forced to concentrate, but he also knows or highly suspects that what he's going to do is take over his body and then kill Holly, and then, do you know what I mean? He's just getting a kill in a different way, and that's a really good scene. That's how are you get out of this? It was really nice. It almost feels like the first time we've seen Brady have the advantage over them. So I remember in the first one, he's actually quite, outside of the Mercedes incident, he's quite a failed terrorist. He accidentally he can't even poison Jerome's dog without killing his own mum. He fails a lot. The team are often one step ahead of him.
Yes.
Even when they're catching up with him and figuring stuff out, it kind of feels like they always have that advantage. It never felt like they were in danger.
Yeah.
This is the first time our ragtag team, as it were, are like, oh, you're fucked. And I guess there's a nice sort of comeuppance. Like, Jerome is not a part of this. They purposely leave him out. There's like, I guess, is it Chekhov's gun? You know, that thing, like the law of, if you see a gun being loaded, it has to be used because of expectations. There's like a Chekhov's ringtone. At some point, like in this book, Holly changed Hodges' like text alert to like a crack of a baseball bat and a smash of a window, and like a home run, sort of like a jokey texting. And it's like on the first page or something, it's the first thing we read. And it's just every 100 pages, it's maybe used once or twice. Yeah. And it's always this thing of, I need to change it. It's just bloody obnoxious. It's like annoying. Yeah. And it basically comes all the way around to saving everyone's life, because Hodges is like forced to play this fishing game, and he feels himself slipping into it. He's tired, he's sick, and he can feel himself being hypnotized. And then, I don't know, crack, smash window, home run, and it whips him out of it enough, and he just lobs it into like a lit fireplace, which sort of like skids Brady out and just goes for like a sort of
Who makes the phone call?
It is a text message, which we find out like in the afterward what that was about.
Right.
Holly's sort of like faking being out, and she sort of crawled to the gun, and she sort of wings Brady, who sort of disappears with an assault rifle. So it's like, we've won, but he's also somewhere. What are we going to do? Hodges is just out. He's sort of been wrestling him, and he's like, just shoot us both, because they were wrestling, and he sort of escapes, and you're like, what's going to happen? And then when Brady gets the drop on them, there's a flash of light and a crash, and Jerome has come to meet them after all. They went out of their way to keep him out of it. There was these reasons they didn't want him there, that to the rest of the world, they were basically going to kill a renowned doctor, because no one was going to believe the mind stuff. They need him to work on the Zap It thing and take down the website. But because his sister was involved, when he spoke to his sister was like, what are you doing? They need you more now than ever. So he's like an hour behind them, and he sort of gets a snowmobile because the snow's, and he...
Bobcat, very reminiscent of the Outlook finale, The Shining. Bobcats,
And he runs him over and wrecks him, which is a nice comeuppance to the Mercedes killer being squashed by a vehicle. But he's not quite dead. And it's like, what are we going to do? And he's like, let me kill myself. So they give him a gun. And this is like, they don't think he's going to do it. They think, is he playing a game with us? Because his finger's not on the trigger. And this is like his last thing, is to use the telekinesis to take himself out of existence. He's finally dead. It's pretty cool. It's nice that the gang got brought back together. I was, because I felt like Jerome just keeps getting sidetracked.
Yeah, sidelined.
Gang. And it makes sense. And it's also like, if you look at my criticism of the first book, that Hodges keeps bringing these innocent people into danger, it's like he answered it. It's like, what do you want, Scott? You literally said you didn't like. So now he's going out of his way to put them out.
Yeah, you know? Push them aside, but yet they still keep turning up.
Yeah. And there's just an afterward. There's like a nice fun, like, you guys are not getting the key to the city this time. No one's in trouble. But last time there was a parade where you saved the day. This time you're not getting free bus passes. Just keep your mouth shut and stop getting involved. And Hodges lives for a while. He gets treatment, and the treatment is arguably successful. This was a shock to me. Yeah, I was 100% expecting him to die with Brady. And so they just get a few more months of life, and then we get like a 6 months, 8 months later at Hodges' funeral, and I think he succumbed to the pancreatic cancer. and the book sort of wraps. Holly, it's a sort of bittersweet moment for Holly. I think she says like Hodges was sort of her friend and only friend who sort of understood her. Brady's done. Hodges solved the case and lived. I guess he lived to solve the case is the nice thing about it. Often when you see things where someone dies in a sacrifice to sort of, stop a bomb or something, I always think that guy didn't know if he succeeded.
You didn't get
what I mean?
the rewards.
The end of
what? So who? Sorry, going back to who sent the text message?
Oh, it was his birthday, and his daughter sent him like a text on like 3 past midnight to say "Happy birthday, Dad."
There we go.
Nice bit of providence there.
Yeah. Love it.
You're just a fan of this book. You loved it through and through. You loved what it did.
Yeah.
Were you on board straight away, or were you like, okay, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what I expected.
No, I was all in because it was. I was all in on this because it was more like what I was used to when reading Stephen King.
Then I had territory.
The supernatural elements were back. The spiritual, ghosty. Oh Jesus! What the hell? That's a really crazy idea. It's unstoppable. How's he going to utilize it? Not knowing what's going to happen. There's no constraint suddenly. All of that played into why I enjoyed this so much. I think considering you didn't rate this as highly, I think you did a good sale there.
Oh yeah, that's good.
You made it sound like you enjoyed it more than you did.
In our past episodes, I'm just going really morally telling the story. I'm trying to drop my nitpicking. At its best, there was stuff I did like in the book. Just overall, I feel like actually there's like 3 groups of fans of this book. And I think I'm going to put myself in what I call like a King traditionalist. Which is why I think when I was looking on my sort of like, YouTube bloggers and stuff, there's a good handful who are in my bed who like found Finders Keepers their favorite. And I think that's because that's the most traditional King book and that's what they're used to. I guess it's odd that I found this a hard read because I don't really care for this as a trilogy. Like, because the first one wasn't precious to me, I enjoyed it and I didn't expect to enjoy it, but at no point was I like, what's the term they use? Like gate housing. You know what I mean? Or was that the term? Safe? What was it? When like Stranger Things came out and like people were like, hey, Metallica, you're not a Metallica fan just because you like this. And then Metallica got involved and were like, hey, no safeguarding. If people like this because of Stranger Things, they're a fan.
Basically.
Gatekeeping, I guess that's the term. I think people hated the sci-fi element because it wasn't present in the first one, and there's a sort of gatekeeping of like, you've broken your own rules almost. You've ruined
what was our world.
Right.
We didn't want it to go. Totally.
But because I just enjoyed the first book but wasn't, fanboying it, I don't know why I still resisted. What does it matter if Hodges got bit by a radioactive spider when Spider-Man? It's like, go for it. Like, you enjoyed the first one and the second one was so out of left field. It's its own thing.
That's what I mean. Like, if the fact that you were able to take the reins off of Brady and let him go wild and let him push people in front of buses and take over doctors and do all the things that he tried to do, and the fact that he tied it back to the Mercedes concert and he still focused on trying to get the people that he failed to get in the first place was really nice.
We're always brought back to Mercedes. I think the opening of the book is the Mercedes incident as from the point of view of the paramedics, which I really like. Because I think Finders Keepers did the same thing, right? It's this heinous thing that happened and the sort of knock-on effect of all the way it goes. I did find the middle of this book a bit dull with the Zappit stuff.
Right.
Just it seems like a very odd choice, like a guy has telekinesis power. He can also get into people's heads, and now we have some sort of device he's using. It is very X-Men-ish, I guess. I forgot how much I found the Zappit thing a bit arduous. To me, it felt like he had an idea for one of his shorts, and he sort of merged it in this. It seemed like that almost should have been like its own thing. I found it a bit tenuous. When we were in it, I liked it, but there was so much yarbling on about the workings of it. And like I said, there's chapters where he gets Freddie to create a website. Like he wants this suicide thing to sort of be huge. He shows a childhood interest into the Frenchiana incident. What's it called? The Kool-Aid. The cult that drank the Kool-Aid. I forgot. I'm completely gone from mind blank.
No idea.
There's a famous incident where like 300 members of a cult drank poisonous.
Right.
The Jonestown massacre.
Right. Okay.
And he wants that sort of level of like annihilation. He's sort of, and also very much like The Outsider, he's sort of grief mopping. Like he's like, because after these people have suicided, I can then go for like the parents. And he sort of created a website which he's like, he's hoping is going to go beyond.
Yes.
And we get this little montage of, I think, 3 people that he tries, like kids. I think 2 are successful, 1 is not, where he gets to sort of commit suicide. And that, as a Stephen King fan, obviously not as a fan of like kids suiciding, it reminded me of like his writing in The Stand. There's just a scene in between book 1 and 2, because it's a time jump, and it's like just vignettes of the survivors dying. There's just like a woman who accidentally, like a woman who was afraid of everyone, and she tried to kill a guy just for talking to her, but the shotgun exploded in her face. There's a guy who accidentally poisoned himself. There's just this whole chapter of just like death, destruction, meaningless. And I thought this book was going to go hard, and it kind of didn't. We get these 3 examples, and they are brutal. There's a kid who is like gay and not accepted by his parents, and he gets in his ear, and that kid like shoots himself in front of his dad, and it's horrific. There's like an overweight lady who jumps out of a window, but the snow breaks her fall. And there's another, I want to say a bathtub. I don't know, but it's actually quite short. What I thought was going to be short and sharp was sort of really short and sharp. I thought we were going to get double the destruction, double the annihilation, because I don't know if I mentioned it, Jerome's sister survived. There's like a kid who just pushes her out the way at the last minute.
Yeah.
And very much like I said in Finders Keepers, where the mum gets shot in the head, you're like, damn, he went there, the stakes are high, people can die. Jerome's sister survived, and I thought it's cool for the characters, but it would have been not a satisfying, it makes me sound really mean and dark, but like, you know, we talked about it in Cujo, he's willing to go there. But when you do it at the end, it's like a dun, dun, dun. When you do it in the middle, it's like, this is how the stakes are high, because people we know and care about are undeservedly dying.
Yes.
And he has the ability to get into other people, control their bodies. He could have literally stabbed Hodges in the eye and killed his daughter, and he doesn't really reap that much destruction on the scale of it. And that's where I thought the book, like King, is kind of pulling his punches in these books. I just sort of expected it to get dark.
Because from I don't know, I just feel like I constantly counter argue, but the restrictions that Brady has placed upon him, and his ability to astral project into people that are easily susceptible, certainly, like Babadook isn't the strongest person in the world, is he?
But he kills people. People do die, just peripheral characters. Like he ends up getting him to kill his wife, and I think he sort of tries to kill Freddie. Like he has the ability to do it. She does. She gets shot, but there's an irony thing of like she gets literally shot in her drug stash tin pot or her flask.
Yeah,
cheeky, like she slipped into alcoholism. Like, oh, but alcoholism sort of thing. And I guess one of my things is like, would I have enjoyed this if it was one of his epic books? If he had time to flesh out the telekinesis, the mind jumping thingy, the zappets, because it's again, it's a pretty. I guess this is the longest. It's just short of 500 pages, but for my copy, a very physically pulp copy, so it's like sparse writing on pages.
Yes,
I guess it has to tie in with the trilogy. What you've done, you know what I mean? Like The Outsider is, you know what I mean? I as much as I have my go for The Outsider, I got really into it because it dives in deep. It goes into lengthy passages.
Yes.
Which we know King can do sometimes to his detriment.
Yeah.
So I guess when I said he sort of pulled his punches on like the destruction and death, I guess it was quite restraint on him to not waffle the fuck on. Even though I kind of feel like he did in the wrong places. Like I said, Brady gets half the book, I suppose. We're with Brady a lot, very much like the first one. It's not a whodunit. We know Brady's plan as it unfolds. There aren't many surprises. There aren't many surprises held back to us, the reader.
No, definitely not.
And it's watching Hodges figure it out. I have some notes, but I haven't had time to put them in order. I'm just going to maybe round them off, even though they're all over the shop.
Yeah, you carry on. It's been enjoyable listening to you dissect this book from your perspective, for sure.
I definitely think Brady is at his best villainousness in this one.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess he's just become super cynical and like not that he was anymore, but I guess his
revengeful.
mum died from and he was already a flipping revengeful guy.
He's at his darkest, for sure.
Yeah. So, were you expecting Hodges to make the ultimate sacrifice and die in his cause?
No, I didn't ever think that. I was more worried for Holly, obviously, because I was very much enamored with her. So that was where my biggest fear was. Hodges, I thought the fact that he was given this death sentence was enough of a death sentence, and I didn't think that. I think that that was the thing that was going to take him, and not it was never going to be Brady. I always felt that Hodges was going to win out.
I guess I thought that because I knew he died because just everyone talks about it in a very like in The Outsider and stuff. But I guess I thought it would be very easy for him to sacrifice himself and people accept it if he had already had this death sentence. It's like, you know, there's a bomb, someone has to stay and hold the blast shields. Well, not only am I old, but I'm already dying. I definitely thought it was going that way. And I guess expectations subverted in a way, but
yeah, totally.
To not really any event other than a happy reading. I feel like this is like King giving the audience what they want in a happy ending.
Yeah. And I think it was nice that that there was, you know, they were able to build finders keepers in those last few months, and he was able to hand it down, and it was, you know, it was wrapped up with a nice little bow in that sense for Hodges, not necessarily the story, but just for Hodges and the relationship that he had with Jerome and Holly, and rather than it go out with this sudden full stop exclamation mark ending.
There's something, it's super interesting to me. I've been listening to a bunch of interviews of King, and you know, he's famously, what's the term? I think there's, I'm sure there's more, but there's these two terms that have come from with writers, and it's like you're either a gardener or an architect. Right. A gardener plants his flowers and lets them grow, and an architect plans the structure of the building, i.e., what's going to happen in the middle and the end. What's I'm going to plot out my novel before I write it.
No, and King is famously
a gardener.
He plants the seed and then sees what happens.
Like I did an interview, and he said he did not expect Holly was supposed to come and go in the first book. He did not expect her to stick around and especially get what she had. And there's something that is. I thought was like, did he know? Because when he talks about The Outsider, he also says he had no idea Holly was going to be in The Outsider. He just needed someone. And so he's like, well, I've got someone. I literally have a private detective to pick this up. And he said he had no plans for Holly to take over that book like she did. It just naturally happened. But here's something in this book. There's just a passage when I think he's talking about Freddie being an outsider. He literally uses the term I think now, because I can't find the bloody page. Like Holly is talking to Freddie and he's helping her and she's covered in blood. And I think like he sort of just that musing on how far Holly's come. I think at one point she even looks him in the eye and drops an F-bomb. She's always like fracking. But he sort of says like, you know, Freddie's an outsider. How is Holly dealing with him? But something along the lines of like, but I have to remember Holly's always been an outsider. It's kind of where her strengths lay. Like if I hadn't read those interviews, it's like, you know, and there's that scene at the end of The Outsider where, bollocks, I can't remember if it's in the TV show or the book, but it's like, yo, Holly, you know what it's like to be the monster outsider is saying to Holly, we're not so different, you and I.
Yeah.
You're an outsider. So there is this motive of her special power being the outsider and her owning it and becoming a power and stuff, which is super cool that he called the outsider. I have no idea if he's aware of that. Sometimes that happy coincidences thing, which is kind of cool. I'll have to edit this.
That's also part of the reason why I enjoy Holly so much. Because she is incessant. She has things to say and places to go and things, and she just wants to be alive. That's how I've always felt, especially with some of the, like you say, behind the scenes reading of how she came about and how incessant she was to keep being about and not just be a forgotten character. Yeah, I completely agree. I yeah, like I said, I really look forward to reading more about her.
Again, I guess I've gone over this. Like, I do think this would have served being a more epic book. There's so many little things in this that King touches upon and then doesn't really get into. The susceptibility of Hodges and suicide. It just seems like King has a lot to say on a lot. And in this book, he doesn't say anything about anything. It's just the events that happen in the book, which I guess is what makes this a standout trilogy for him. In that
they were always pulpy beach novels, though, weren't they? They were always, that's how he wrote them, to be sort of quick, snappy.
Yes, so yeah, almost one sitting reads.
Yeah, so we've kept it to that style, I think, and consistency throughout the three novels. Although he does chuck in the supernatural element, which threw a lot of people at the time.
There is, I think I touched upon this as well, there is a huge mixed consensus about what's good and what's bad about these. It does seem like, I thought it was a quite split divide, but it does seem like people are all over the place with it. There's sort of subgroups who, like, I think being that there's 3 books, there's someone who loves the first one and hates the middle 2. There's someone who loves the first 2 and hates the third one. There's someone who loves the second and third one but hates the first one. There is a complete mix of what people love about it.
And then there's me who just loves all 3.
So it leaves me wondering why this has such a huge following, considering they're so pulpy. And I'm thinking it's because it's the first manageable thing Stephen King's done. It's like a sort of trilogy. Normally when he does something like this, it's like, right, have you read book 15 of this? There's that joke video where that guy does like, so you're going to read the Dark Tower books. And it's like this joke conversation of the guy going, yeah, I'm thinking of reading Dark Tower. What should I read? Okay, so you should read Dark Tower 1. Sure. Have you read Insomnia? No, you have to read that. Have you read The Stand? No, you have to read The Stand. Yeah, and just basically like you've just listed every single Stephen King book to understand it. You know, like, and even without that, The Dark Tower is only. Has he done I guess his hard crimes novel is a series, but then they're not linked, right? That's just a label. Like this is tangible and easy to manage and enjoy Stephen King.
Yeah, definitely.
Which I guess is exactly what it is. I guess he hit the nail on the head in that case.
Yeah, agree with that. Gave me exactly what I wanted. Like I've said, I enjoyed the first one immensely. I enjoyed the second one, but nowhere near as much as I enjoyed the first and third one. And I think Holly is a wonderful character, and I look forward to reading an awful lot more of books with her in. And
there's a short story in If It Bleeds.
Yes,
Is that the titular story? If It Bleeds, the story.
Yeah.
I guess I know a little bit about it because I was watching a bunch of interviews of him, and he's just sort of dropped a little bit about what happens. I don't know if it's the main event or what, but that's definitely.
Yeah, well, it's basically about Holly and finders keepers and a case.
Is it about Jerome? I don't know.
Jerome's in it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's the finders keepers crew, and I believe Jerome's sister's in it as well.
Okay, because he sort of alluded to like a fallout, like. Them not getting on or something.
No, they're all best buds and working.
Oh, interesting. I don't know if he'd already written it at that stage then, or what he was referring to, or maybe that's the new Holly book. I have no idea. It felt like an old interview. No, I'm glad I finally got this out of the way. I guess it was very low on my. Like I said, I've come to realize I'm just a sort of a King traditionalist, and I haven't read a lot of his old books. And you keep sort of getting me to read his new books. We've got an email. Email us, listeners. What did you think of the whole trilogy thing?
Yes, please do. And use the comments below. Like and subscribe and all those wonderful things that attach to listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos. Because we enjoy doing these. And the more people that we reach, the more we'll do.
Do Misery next. Do the Stephen King. Do the one with the legs. Do Misery next. Do that one. I'll sing the movie that one.
Oh dear. Thanks a lot.
We love you, listeners. Hey, we're going to wrap it up around there. I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed. Join us again next episode, and until then, support your local bookstores and have a great day.